Welcome to the CFB Dynasty podcast with hosts Matt Knowles, Brian McElfresh, and Doug Gravely.
Hey everybody, how you doing out there? This is the CFB Dynasty podcast. This is a very special week. Why is that? Because it's college football season eve.
We made it.
D-Mac, how excited are you for this?
Oh man, I'm stoked. I'm sick also, so I'm gonna sound a little weird and nasally, but I cannot wait. Gonna have some wings. Watch the games with Gunner, my 7-year-old. He's excited, so it's gonna be a good time just to watch some football Saturday.
So we know everybody's excited for that FSU Georgia Tech matchup in Ireland. Is there another game in week 0? There's only a few. Is there another game in week 0 that you're excited for? What is it and why?
I'm excited to see SMU and see how they do. I think that's an 8:00 kick, and they're at Nevada. And I just want to see how they spread the ball around. That's going to be a real key for college fantasy, and it could lead to some pickups early in the season. You know, everybody's got drafts, not a ton of injuries out there, which is nice. But yeah, that's going to be one to watch because if somebody breaks out, gets 8 to 10, targets or whatever, that's someone to watch.
I'm looking forward to that Delaware State-Hawaii game, and here's why. Hawaii, there's times when Hawaii does really good. They put up video game numbers with their offense. They are favored by 40.5 points in this opening week game. If they go out there and cover that spread, then you might be able to feel confident about starting some Hawaii guys, Pefeli Ashlock, their quarterback, in games. If they go out there and they struggle with a team like Delaware State in week 0 at home, then you might want to be thinking about, do I really want to trust anybody on Hawaii? So that's why I'm looking forward to that. It's a late start game. BMAC's going to be in bed, but I've already assured him I'll be texting him at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, giving him the mundane updates to that game.
No doubt. And Hawaii is used to having the most difficult travel schedule, but they won't this year. Cal travels 83% of the circumference of the earth this year with their ACC schedule. That's going to be
so
wild.
Weird, so crazy, so crazy.
I know. It's going to be that's going to affect, like, next week we get right into our week 1 prep show, going over our rankings for week 1. That's going to play a factor for a lot of those teams that are having to travel so much. It swings lines in the NFL when you go across. Imagine what it does to a college football team going across the country.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's one of the things we've talked about before, that you look at Hawaii, especially late in the season when they're going to cold weather games. I remember a couple of years ago, I think they went to Wyoming, and their players couldn't even hold on to the ball. It was like shocking watching them not even be able to grab the ball. It was barely even like a college football game. So is that same kind of thing going to happen, like you said, with Cal, where they're having to go, across 3 time zones for multiple games? That's going to be tough on college guys, but we'll have to see. So we also are going to talk today. We're going to give some of our breakouts, some of our predictions. We're not going to get into like real college football predictions. We're going to save that for next week. But we're going to talk about players that we think are breakouts. We're also going to cover a little bit from our CFB Dynasty home league draft that just happened this past weekend, or this past week. And that's where this all started. For those of you that are just joining us and have never watched this podcast before, have never heard the start of the season, BMAC, why don't you just cover real quick why this league started? I know this started from a conversation with Gordy Miller, but just cover real quick why this league even came into existence in the first place.
Yeah, and this is part of the beauty of college fantasy football, is draft strategies can be drastically different, especially as you get into the full dynasty where you're going college to pro, all that stuff. So that is kind of where it started. We wanted more of a challenge. We had a base of people, who love college football. For me, it's, far and away, I love college football over NFL. That's not the case for all of our members, but yeah, it was just a different challenge. And we're drafting people coming out of high school as they go to our college team, and then they graduate essentially to our NFL team. So with that kind of strategy, everybody's different, what they need positionally, how they try to balance their roster. Are they positioning to win in college, or are they positioning to win in the pros, or both? And then there's all the trade assets that go into it, whether it's free agent budget. Now we're adding to the mix as a tradable asset, including a couple years of draft picks, which is super fun.
So I don't know if you have those pictures to pull up, or you could show. We got some pictures. This is one of the few leagues where I'm actually able to get together in a real conference room and do the draft. It's actually pretty fun. So there's a picture. We wanted to make sure we got a picture of Doug in front of his championship banner. BMAC, why don't you refresh everybody on how many points Doug won that championship game by last year?
I don't remember the points. It was like less than a point or a point and a half or something like that. But it was one meaningless Justin Jefferson catch that lost me the game. And the year before, we decided to go to tenths of points so we wouldn't have ties anymore. Doug and I, in our one regular season game, we tied. So we had a really good matchup in the championship, and then just lost.
So our league is a college to pro
Congrats to
dynasty
Doug.
league. So you got to be looking at guys that are incoming freshmen and looking to see if those are guys that you want for college production and for pro potential. So it makes our draft one of the neatest drafts because more than anything, you go into this draft and you have no idea what other teams are going to do. And we have a running joke, and even when we went in there, guys were like, is there going to be a bad pick? Are you going to call us out on the podcast? Because they follow the podcast. They know what's up. And, we always are like, who's going to be the first one to make a pick that's going to get called out? And I can truly tell you, after what is it now, BMAX, 17 years of doing this, that there really isn't a bad pick. Really isn't a bad pick, because how do you really know? How do you really know? Unless somebody was to pick a senior that's injured and out for the year and he's not going to have a pro career, how can you really make a bad pick? There's two guys I wanted to call out to just show you guys how crazy draft strategies can be. So Sean Howard and Danny Tucker. Last year, they were the number 1 and number 2 guys in the draft. Both teams did not perform well at all. And they went into the draft, and you could not have any more different draft strategies than these two guys did. I'm going to tell you the year of the player that each one of them drafted. So Danny Tucker moved around in the draft. He ended up with 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. And his first 5 guys, actually, I'm going to go his first 6 guys, freshman, sophomore, freshman. He was like, you know what? I'm going to be building for the future. I don't want to be having to rebuild every year. Sean Howard, here's what his top 5 guys or top 6 guys: senior, then a sophomore, then another senior. So he's like, forget it, man. I need to not be leading the league in career losses. I need to try and find a way to get me some wins. And he went straight down the CFBDynasty cheat sheet and was drafted in the top available wide receivers. 3 of his top 4 picks were top wide receivers on the board that were available. And his top running back was Malik Sherrod from Fresno State. So it was really interesting seeing these two guys with very similar results last year, very similar needs, approach the draft as opposite as you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm glad I faced Danny week 1. It should be a nice, like old school beatdown game week 1, hopefully. But hey, maybe he'll surprise. You never know what happens in these crazy mismatch games.
And I faced Sean in week 1, and Sean went from having the worst wide receiver core to maybe the best in one draft. So yeah, I'm not happy about that. So BMAC, who is somebody we're going to go to? Who is the favorite player you drafted? What was your favorite pick that you had in our draft?
So I made a trade up, like anyone else, as you get to draft day, you start to get nervous about those guys. I traded up for the 1.1 so I could get Lagway. And yes, it helped. My son really, really wanted me to get him. So, so did I, but I didn't have any picks in rounds 2 or 3 going into the draft. And, so I ended up having to trade up to get a guy who I'm going to talk about as a breakout candidate, someone that has put on a bunch of muscle just like you, and he's ready to go. Jeremiah Love, running back for Notre Dame. I think from what I've seen, like how they're going to call plays there, from the play caller, not from a beat writer, It's going to be Jeremiah Love featured. Jadarian Price is really good and healthy. And I just love how they're going to use him. They're, training him in the slot, but he's a beast. He's got 95 speed in the college football video game, and he's added some strength in the offseason. So it's going to be a breakout candidate. He was one of those my guys, along with Eric Singleton, who I really like. I hate that he is unstartable in the fantasy playoffs, but hopefully he helps get me there. Georgia Tech, they returned 4 out of 5 O-linemen. They returned Haynes King at quarterback, and Singleton broke out last year, so he's not listed as a breakout player for me, but he's going to kill it this year. And he's going to be a future Devy guy as well.
I can say one of my favorite picks that I made this year. It was really weird watching the draft unfold because a lot of guys will shy away from senior starting quarterbacks unless they think they've got pro potential. And I came into the draft with some senior guys, so I really didn't want to go that direction. But late in the draft, I had a couple quarterback spots open and nobody had touched anybody from Western Kentucky. So back-to-back picks in pick 94 and 106, I got TJ Finley and Caden Veltkamp, both quarterbacks for Western Kentucky. And I'm like, when you're talking about that deep into the draft, I'm like, you can't go wrong because one of those guys is going to break out.
Yep.
So I felt really good about that. And I also, I told his mom that I was going to make sure I said something about this. There's a guy he's a preferred walk-on kicker for Alabama. He played on my daughter's when they were 11 years old. They played on the same soccer team, won 32 straight games, won a state championship. When he moved to Alabama, he decided to pick up football as well. He drilled a 57-yarder in high school last year. Got noticed by Nick Saban and actually is a commit to Alabama now. So I told my daughter, I'm like, if I have a chance and I have an open spot, I'm drafting the dude that was on your 11-year-old soccer team. So Tucker Cornelius from Alabama, he might be the 4th string kicker, but I had an open kicker spot. I felt fun. It was fun to do that.
Yeah, it's always fun when you get the personal connection or you have one of those my guys. Man, I was just nervous going in, and I was happy those two fell to me, and glad you were able to get them too.
So BMAC, I know at the draft you were really upset because there's a couple of guys, a couple ways you thought the draft was going to go, and there were some guys you missed out on. Who's the guy that you have the biggest regret that you were not able to draft?
Well, Ryan Williams was a guy that if he somehow fell to the second round, then I was going to trade up and snag him. And William took him, I think, with the 5th pick. Great pick. Like, he's going to be a featured guy. And then in that Kalen DeBoer offense, and in the future, they're going to have probably more of a pocket passer than they will in 2024 with Milroe. I like what Ryan Williams can be. He can be the featured guy. And you saw a couple fantasy relevant guys playing for him at Washington, and now they're on to the pros. So Ryan Williams could be the feature of that offense next year from a touches standpoint. We'll see who comes back and all that stuff. But Jaden Blue was another one that I kind of hoped fell to the second round as like I'll trade up and get him. But he also went in the first round, and it's good. Like, he's going to be the premier back at Texas for a great O-line. So expect a huge year out of Jaden Blue. Other than that, I felt pretty good. Sean definitely kind of ruined my draft. I thought he would, go homer mode like normal, get his nose early, but he got his nose late this year instead, and took a bunch of guys that are good, in this kind of league. Those senior receivers, you think about draft capital and what you're going to spend on them. Well, you're going to get them for what you're going to start them 10, maybe 11 times, 12 at most. And that's all you get. It's a one and done, no pro potential, that kind of stuff. So, man, I was really hoping those would fall. And some drafts that we have, they're under the radar and they undervalued or whatever, and they fall down. But no, I have I have more of a wide receiver need in the waiver wire this year.
So for me, I came into the draft. I didn't need a whole lot of wide receivers, and I knew where I needed to go early. I got Tez Johnson and Jalen Moss, and at that point of the draft, I was tapped out. I was able to trade away some of my known commodities later on to get a couple of my guys, but at that point, I was tapped out, and I was unable to draft one of the guys that we'll talk about a little more later. That I really, really think is going to have a insane year is Joey Hobart from Texas State. Joey Hobart has got a huge upgrade at quarterback coming in with Jordan McLeod. And if you go back to last year, prior to his bowl game, his last 4 games, if Joey Hobart's somebody you haven't heard of, in the last 4 games of the regular season last year, he had 47 targets in 4 games. And in one game against Georgia Southern, he had 13 targets and 13 receptions. Every single target he had in that game, he had a catch. He is probably going to be one of those guys that's going to blow up again. We're going to talk about him a little bit more later. So I was bummed I couldn't get Joey Hobart. I also was really bummed that he went to Mike Dillingham. He had Mike Dillingham, Mike Davis, 2 of the guys that are perennial champs in our college pro league, had really, really good drafts. And I hated seeing a guy that good going to Mike Dillingham. But yeah, that's the one guy. But there's nothing I really could have done. I already had I was tapped at a wide receiver, and it was either take a sophomore wide receiver or a senior, and so I went with the sophomore from Fresno State.
Heck yeah.
All right, so that's our little draft review. I think it's going to be fun. Before we move on to the news and notes, we're going to skip around a little bit in our run sheet. This is not the only league that we have that's going to be running. We have our CFB Dynasty Open League, our CFB Dynasty Masters League. If you want to get in that, you need to make sure you let us know so we can send you an invite. The Masters League is invite only. It's people that were in the top 6 from our Open League last year, our 24-team league, and then a few handpicked experts that are also going to be in the league. The reason we need you to get a hold of us as soon as possible, whether it's in the comments here, whether it's on Discord, whether it's sending Brian at CFBDynasty.com an email, is because the draft is going to run slow, but the draft is going to start Monday. It has to be done by like Wednesday night, because week 1 starts Thursday with some big games, and the draft has to be done so we can get our lineup set up, our schedule set up, and we can go from there. So if you want to be a part of that CFB Dynasty Open League, part of that promotion, relegation, let us know so we can send you that invite and we can make it happen.
And let me apologize. Like, this stuff, should have been locked in and done by July. And I was just super busy, to be frank. And this kind of fell back a little bit, but we're going to pump it up. It's going to be fun. We'll talk about it all throughout the season. And I look forward to competing with you guys. But in general, yeah, we should have had this wrapped up and full by July. And next year we will.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. So you guys want to be in that Open League? Open League was super fun last year. Open League was great because, we got to interact with some people that we've never interacted with before. It's the first time that I've been in a league that size that was doing free agent budget. And it just made the picks super fun. So, we hope you guys will take a chance on it. And if you've never played college fantasy football before, that is the way to get yourself in and experience how fun it is. I know there was a bunch of people in our league last year. And there's at least one, Carissa at your office, that had never played college fantasy before. And so it was fun having guys that are experts and guys that are deep into the knowledge of it, playing against somebody like Carissa, especially when she was able to get wins against the experts. We didn't let them live it down, because you're supposed to be the expert and you're letting the newbie come in here, the rookie come in and get the dub on you. So that made it even more fun. The stakes were super high.
Yeah, she didn't get too many of those wins, though. So while we're on scheduling and stuff, so next week starts for us. Our week prep show where we'll have our rankings done for members. We'll go over some of them. We'll take start sit questions, do our DFS battle, all that stuff. That will be published on Thursdays. Obviously, things will change a little bit when it comes to those Maction games starting on Tuesday nights and stuff later on in the season. So we'll adjust when those rankings go live, but typically everything will go live on Thursday. and we'll do the show. And will we be going live on the show like we did last year?
You guys tell us. I feel like doing some of the shows live has been pretty cool. So we'll see.
It was fun getting the
We'll
comments.
see. Yeah, we'll see if we can do some live shows throughout the season. But yeah, we definitely are looking forward to getting to that week 1 and getting back on the regular season schedule. Talking about the craziness of the games that happen, getting our brisket lock back in here, talking about who's on the milk carton, guys we thought were going to be good and completely disappeared in the week. That is so much fun every week when we can talk about that stuff.
No doubt.
That being said, it's week 0, and we do have some news and notes for you.
News and notes around college football.
All right, so this week we have a little bit of a theme. It's week 0. There's a lot of schools that are out there naming their starting quarterbacks. So the vast majority of this news is going to be about the starting quarterbacks. All right, so the greatest name in all of college football, QB General Booty, UL Monroe, is expected to get the call to be the starter. CJ Ogbonna for Buffalo named the starter. Cade McNamara at Iowa leading that QB battle. Ben Finley, ex-NC State and Cal, has been named the starter at Akron. Chandler Morris, North Texas, named the starter. Dylan Raiola, Nebraska, no surprise to anybody, he's named the week 1 starter. Gio Lopez, South Alabama. Lenora Sellers, South Carolina, also both named starters. Cam Fancher, FAU. Miller Moss, USC, all named the starters at their respective schools. So when you're going into your draft, remember those names to decide if you want to actually go and pick up that starter. Couple other interesting notes from this week. Velton Gardner decides he's going to transfer from SMU, transferring over to Texas. That's a weird start. I mean, a weird transfer. Decide to transfer at this point. We'll see when he's going to be eligible. Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next? We'll see. Kamar Wheaton, he is out for the season. The last note we have, Stephen McBride, wide receiver from Hawaii, who's had some legal issues. He is not on the week 0 depth chart, so it'll be interesting to see how long he sits. Is he just going to sit for week 1 against Delaware State, or is he going to be able to come back and start week 1, or is it going to be out for a little bit longer than that? We'll get more in depth on this stuff online. If there's any updates for this, we'll make sure that we get them up within 24 hours. Just make sure you're checking the site, checking the Discord, because we want to make sure that you go to CFB Dynasty, where we help you to take your college fantasy football experience to the next level.
Good one, Matt. Yes, thank you for that. A lot of good news. Not as many injuries. We had the one big one, obviously, with Cedric Baxter, but and a couple others, but nothing massive, and that was great. So we'll see. I think maybe the strength and conditioning and all that stuff's a little different, or maybe we just got lucky this year. But
yeah, I do think that Ben Finley getting the start at Akron is going to be something to keep our eyes on, because Ben Finley he's got the bloodline of being a starting quarterback, but maybe being in a Power 5 conference was just a little bit above his skill set. I'm not saying that it was, but maybe that just was where the situation was for him at NC State and Cal. Maybe Akron's going to be a better fit playing against a lot of Group of 5 teams. So that could be a big one right there, because he's got some skills.
And Alex Adams to throw to.
Yes.
Yep. So we'll see. A healthy Alex Adams. That should make a solid difference there.
So that's the news and notes for this week. There's obviously a lot of other things we could have covered, but we felt like those quarterback starting nods were going to be the most important thing, especially considering there's going to be some drafts coming up, including our Open and Masters League. All right, so with that being said, we now want to get to our segment on breakouts. This segment is about guys that maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, maybe they weren't guys that were on the radar. Maybe they're guys that have jumped up. So both BMAC and I have put together a list of some guys that we really think are guys that are going to be in the public discussion when we get to the end of the season. So BMAC, who's the first guy you have on your list? This doesn't have to be in any order. This is the top rankings, but who's the top guy you want to make sure you call out?
Yeah, I talked about him earlier. Jeremiah Love, for all the same reasons I mentioned earlier. Like, he's already got the speed, he's got the quickness. He's replacing 1,300 yards, 10+ touchdowns of production from last year. And while a lot of people think this is going to be a split, I think Jeremiah Love, if Notre Dame's successful, he's gonna be very fantasy relevant. Hopefully, the breakout year comes true, and I just it's just one of those things where I just feel it coming, and that's kind of how someone becomes a my guy. I feel like you're watching the highlights, you like what you're reading, you hear, the positivity coming from the OC there, and so uh, I feel like things are kind of lining up. I like Jeremiah Love to break out this year. Who you
All right,
got?
I'm going to go with the obvious one off the top, simply because a month ago he was a guy that was barely in our top 30, and that's Jaden Blue. Just goes to show how an injury to a major player like CJ Baxter can completely change a depth chart for a college team and for fantasy prospects. You had him in a potentially running back by committee situation there, or playing second fiddle to CJ Baxter. Now he's the unquestioned number one. He's a top 10 fantasy back for a school like Texas. And if you have an opportunity to get Jaden Blue in your draft, you want to jump on him, because he is probably going to be a guy that is going to be putting up huge numbers this year.
Second for me, I like Kyron Lacey. And this is a pretty obvious one. It's one that most people expect. Like, he was productive as wide receiver 3. I think he had like 7 touchdowns last year and 700 yards. So it's going to be no surprise for Kyron Lacey to take over wide receiver 1. He does have some competition. CJ Daniels comes over, and another transfer. But anyways, like, Lacey looks the part. He's got the size to be the prime red zone target there, and along with the tight end, obviously. But I like Lacey to break out, to go for 1,000 yards and 10 plus touchdowns. Seemingly pretty easy.
So I'm going to go back to our Western Kentucky situation. I've got both Finley and Veldkamp on my list. If you pay any attention at all to college fantasy football, you know that one of the positions that will always get you points is whoever the starting quarterback is at Western Kentucky. They got Finley coming over, who is on a lot of postseason watch lists for like the Senior Bowl and things like that. Veldkamp absolutely blew up in the final game last year for Western Kentucky. He almost transferred out, but then he pulled his name out of the transfer portal and he decided to stay. So you've got 2 guys that can definitely run that offense. Whoever is the one that takes that starting nod, I mean, obviously it's going to be Finley, but whoever's the one who gets the start for that week, if Finley was to go down, Veldkamp is there. If Veldkamp could be the heir apparent next year, that is a position. If you have opportunity to get one of those 2 guys, you want to have them, because the starting quarterback position of Western Kentucky is basically like printing money yourself.
Right. No doubt. Third on the list for me, it's funny if you heard his comment from just a very recent, maybe a day or 2 ago. Aiden Childs, Michigan State quarterback, perfect offense for him, loads of talent, and he was asked about what he thinks the offense is going to be essentially in the new year. And it's funny to hear a guy talk about gambling in college football, but that's where we are. And he was like, if you're going to bet our games, just bet the over. And he loved to hear that coming out of the quarterback there. So he's dual threat. He's super quick. So can't wait to see what he is. He's going to be one of those, that Michigan State, because of Aiden Childs and that offense, is going to be one of those teams I can't wait to watch how they come out of the gates in the first month of the year.
I'm going to go back to Joey Hobart. That's one of my guys on the breakouts. I'm not going to belabor the point, since I did speak about him a lot earlier. But Joe Dirt, he's a great interview. He's got an improved offense. He's got one of the best quarterback, running back, wide receiver groups in the country for fantasy. When you talk about Ishmael Mahdi and Jordan McLeod, Joey Hobart has the potential to be a guy that is just going to be just putting up stupid stats all year. Can't wait to see what he does this year.
I'm going to go against your next pick. And Jonte Cook. I think, like, as far as talent goes, he's got it all. And he's also wearing number 1, I think, this year for Texas. So it looked really good out there in the spring. He's running with the ones. They're replacing a ton of production at wide receiver. They've got a pocket passer for a quarterback, whether they go first, second, third string. And I like I like Cook a lot as far as talent goes. We don't know who's going to break out there. Your next guy is who most people think it's going to be. And he's also, mocked really highly in 2025 NFL mock drafts. But I like Jonte Cook. I don't hear a lot of people talking about him. And he's in a great situation to have the opportunity to break out. We'll see if he takes it or not.
So the person that BMAC is talking about on my list is Isaiah Bond, and yeah, he's definitely mocked really high. And you could be right. I mean, Jonte Cook could be the guy over Isaiah Bond. The thing for me with Bond was that he was supposed to be the next wide receiver at Alabama.
Yep.
He was supposed to be that next guy after Alabama put so many wide receivers into the NFL. It looked like he was going to be that guy, and then Alabama kind of fell back a little bit at their wide receiver production, transfers to Texas, and everybody's just blown up about him. I can't wait to see, is it going to be both of them? That's now 3 guys from the Texas offense that we've called out in this segment alone. So Texas is either going to have one of the greatest offenses of all time, or they're going to make both of us all look like fools by calling out all these guys from their offense. All right, B-Mac, who you got next?
One of the guys that most of you guys know that I love, Zachariah Branch. He's got the talent. He's in the offense. He's going to get the opportunities and targets this year. It's got to happen. It just has to happen. I don't see a world where he's healthy in that offense and doesn't have a breakout season. So, if I'm wrong, I'll be shocked. But Zach Branch.
All right, so my last guy I have on the list is Anthony Hankerson, transfer over from Colorado. Why is he on the list? Couple reasons. One, because you have one of the most productive running backs in college football, Damian Martinez, that transferred out because of an NIL issue. He was all about Oregon State, and he was like, hey, I'm Oregon State through and through. Then he said, hey, I had an issue. I felt like I was misled by the NIL collective. And he's like, I'm out of here, transfers to Miami. Damian Martinez is probably going to help to pump up that Miami offense, but somebody's got to fill in that gap for the ultra productive Damian Martinez. You've got Jam Griffin and you've got Anthony Hankerson. Currently right now, Griffin is listed as the number 1 with Hankerson as the 2, but they've said that it's probably going to be an RBBC there, and they really are excited about what Hankerson is going to do. And I think there's a chance Hankerson is going to be the starting running back by the end of the season there with a lot of upside potential.
Love it. And my last one, Kanye Roberts, running back from App State. He's in a position where I think he's got 1,300, 1,400 yards kind of potential. We'll see that offense, historically they'll use 2 running backs, but would love to see him take on that lead role. And I think he's going to have an opportunity behind a really good O-line. And App State is probably who I would pick as the group of 5 team that's going to, go for that playoff spot from the group of 5. Obviously could be easily Liberty with their easy schedule and returning talent, could be Boise, but App State's going to be up there too. And I think Kanye Roberts is going to be a big reason why. Speed, talent in front of him. It's going to be a good mix for him.
The bottom line is very excited to see how this college fantasy season and college football season plays out. Next podcast, we're going to make sure that we've got some of our predictions. Maybe it's playoff teams. Maybe it's Final Four. Maybe it's the biggest surprises in the actual college season. Who knows? We'll have to see what mood we're in when it comes to the first week's podcast for next year. Real quick, before we get out of here, we do want to say now is the time we really want to see people interacting on the Discord channel. There's a couple of comments up there to call out. One of the comments that we wanted to make sure was called out on there, Broncos for Life 90 said, where can I see your guys' ADP? So when it comes to CFB Dynasty, we're not going to normally be putting ADPs up there because since we're not a draft hosting site, we're not really going to have an ADP up there. If we're talking ADP, we're looking at, say, Fantrax or other sites that are doing their ADPs because that's where the ADPs are going to come from.
And it's something we want to pull into our database in the future for sure. But yes, that's a good call out and something we have considered and do want to provide. And it, where you draft people, the value you get for the pick is obviously extremely, extremely important. So if you can take a guy that we have ranked 12th in the, 4th round instead of the 2nd round, that's great. So that is something we do need to provide, though, in the future.
And then there was a comment that happened a little ways ago. I mean, it actually happened quite a while ago, but it's still one that I want to make sure gets called out. Will Jaggers a few weeks ago said he just signed up for the premium site. Excited to be in this community. Do you all do draft advice here? Absolutely. That is literally what this whole thing is about. Draft advice, weekly start and sits, DFS. That is what we're here for. Whether it's on the podcast or in the community, this is a very, very active in-season community that's going to help you with a lot of those different decisions. The more you give, the more you get back out as well. We want to see your comments. We want to see your thoughts as well. If there's something news-wise that we don't cover and you want to make sure that it gets on the pod, make sure that you put those notes up there on the Discord. And we love talking about the notes that people are putting in there. We love giving people by name call outs. It's part of the fun.
Heck yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. And we go right into week 1 rankings show with final predictions next week after we've watched some football. It's all coming together. It's all exciting, man. But glad to have you guys along with us.
All right. So I think unless you got something else, B-Mac, it's time to get out of here for this week. This has been the CFBDynasty.com podcast. Please make sure you go and like, follow, share, subscribe on all social medias. Make sure you go to the Discord. And right now, before it's too late, get up there and join the CFB Dynasty Open League so that you can have a chance to have your name in lights and be a champion of the CFB Dynasty Leagues. On behalf of Brian McElfresh and the Missing Doug Dynasty, my name is Matt Knowles. We thank you for joining us this week. This has been the CFB Dynasty podcast. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the CFB Dynasty podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube and reviewing us on your podcast network.